Hello students, in this particular module I am going to talk about France becomes a constitutional monarch from the chapter French Revolution. In the previous modules you have seen that how the third estate people formed National Assembly and gathered in indoor tennis ground and promised that unless and until they draft the constitution for France, they would not leave the ground. So finally, the National Assembly, under the leadership of Mirabeau and Avesius, completed the draft of the constitution in 1791. Its main object was to limit the powers of the monarch, so that monarch King Louis XVI would not rule the country by absolute and divine right. He will be bound by the Constitution of 1791 and rule the country according to this Constitution drafted by the National Assembly. These powers were now separated and assigned to different institutions. According to the constitutions, powers were divided in different institutions. The powers were not given completely to the King Louis XVI, to the monarch, but it was divided to the legislature, executive, and judiciary. This legislative and executive and judiciary was spoken by one of our philosophers. According to this, all these three institutions will have their own rule of law. According to the constitution, these three would function. This made France a constitutional monarch. So, having a constitution in the country, the monarch has to rule according to the constitution written by the National Assembly. So, the country now is no more a monarch or a dynasty ruled, but constitutional monarch. The constitution began with a declaration of rights of man and citizens. Like our constitution begins with preamble. In the same way, this constitution of 1791 began with declaration of rights of man and citizens. To know more about these rights of man and citizens, you need to refer figure 8 in page 11 in your book. The rights such as the right to life, freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, equality before law were established as natural and inalienable rights. All the rights are mentioned in Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizens. In largely you can see in figure 8 in page 11. And all these rights which were not given before Constitution of 1791 to third estate. Only the first state and second state enjoyed all the privileges. But now the Constitution of 1791 gives equal right to all the citizens of country. This Declaration of Rights of Men and Citizens also it adopted in Indian constitutions, and from that is where from French Revolution India adopts all the fundamental rights in our constitutions. These rights belonged to each human being by birth and could not be taken away. All this freedom, all this right, the privileges were given by birth to only to first and the second state. Third estates were completely neglected, and all the expenses were collected only from the third estates. But now everyone, including third estate, all are equal before the law according to the Constitution of 1791 in France. But not all citizens had the right to vote according to the Constitution. Like in India, universal adult franchise that we practice after 1950. once Indian constitution was drafted. Only men above 25 years of age who paid taxes equal to at least 3 days of a labor's wage were given the status of active citizens and were entitled to vote. Only the active citizens, those who were above 25 years age plus, they were able to pay taxes at least equal to 3 days of labor's wage. And rest all the women, remaining men and all women were classed as passive citizens. That means they were not allowed to give vote or elect their representatives. All the women were completely neglected in this right. When we go about in this chapter, you will come to know only in 1946, just before the independence of India, women of France get right to vote. In this figure, in page number, in your book, you can see figure number 7, how the National Assembly arranged and divided the powers between legislative, executive, and judiciary. So here you can see we have only 50,000 men as electors to elect the National Assembly, the representatives. Out of 28 millions population in France, only about 4 millions population was active citizens, and rest all women, children and youth below 25 were passive citizens. They were not allowed to participate in the decision making, political decision making of the country. Next, we'll do about reading political symbols. There are some symbols to signify messages of the politics. The majority of men and women in the 18th century could not read or write. So these symbols spoke a lot, gave messages to illiterate people. So images and symbols, these all images and symbol painted by Lee Barber were used instead of printed words to communicate important ideas of the content of the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizens. For instance, you can see first the eye within a triangle radiating light. That meant the all seeing eye stands for knowledge. The rays of the sun will drive away the clouds of ignorance. So no one will be ignored. The law is always watching, all are equal before the law. Next, the scepter, symbol of royal power. The king, the queen held the scepter, the stick, as to show that he had the power, the royal power. Snake biting its tail to form a ring, a symbol of eternity. A ring has neither beginning nor end. So if everything is forever, nothing has end. The broken chain. Chains were used to fetter slaves. A broken chain stands for the act of becoming free. So now all the citizens in the country are free, not under the fetters as a slave. The bundle of rods or faces. One rod can be easily broken, but not an entire bundle. Strength lies in unity. Unitedly we stand. That is what. If or we are together, we can achieve our goals. The next, the winged woman, personification of law. The law tablet. The law is the same for all, and all are equal before law. Red Phrygian cap, cap owned by a slave upon becoming free. Once the chain is broken, this is what the slave has to wear to say that he was free. Blue, white, red, the national colors of France. These are the political symbols that gave special significations, the message to the illiterate. Thank you for your attention.